Welcome back, everyone, to the 3PL Summit. I'm excited to have a wonderful chat with everyone today on AI and technology in our industry. And we have a legacy provider here, and I think someone with a really important title in a legacy provider as well. Joining us today is Jonah McIntire from Trimble, their Chief Platform Officer. Jonah, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'd love if you could introduce yourself to our audience as well.
It's a pleasure being here with you and with everyone else. Yeah, I'm Jonah McIntire. I lead the product and platform for Trimble Transportation. That comprises a lot of kind of well-known brands for people in the audience, things like TruckMate, Team W Suite, as well as Transporian, 6-Volt Visibility, and on and on. Happy to talk to you about AI. It's something that I'm pretty passionate about. We've been working on for years now.
Well, and I want to start off by really setting the table of what's happening today in AI in particular, especially from a broker's perspective, as we have a number of wonderful brokers watching of all sizes, right? Not just the big companies, but the small and medium sized brokers as well. Can you give us an overview of how you think AI is transforming this industry and for those brokers' lives as well?
Yeah. So the current state of AI has really been rocked by the arrival of generative AI, which is sort of a branch of it. And I think the key thing for the brokerage community to keep in mind is generative AI sort of inverts the expectations for how you get thinking done in your business. So in the past, if you wanted thinking done, if you want people to do thoughtful work, you had to hire people, and they were a fixed cost. You hire them, and then you pay them for the month that is ahead. And if that includes, say, for example, holidays or vacation, well, you're still outlaying, you're still paying for them, right? And if you think about generative AI, this is kind of like thought in a black box. You ask it to think about something, it gives you back its sort of reflections, but you pay by the thought. It's much cheaper, but it's also you pay by the thought. And so it takes this cost, which used to be a fixed cost, and it converts it into a variable cost. And why that's important in particular for the brokerage community is that the whole brokerage model, all the things that get done in it are back office work. They're all thought work that's done in a back office. You don't have to be out there physically doing anything. You don't own assets. It's all about thinking through inputs and outputs with your customers and your suppliers. And so it really has a potential to radically change the brokerage business, because it takes what is essentially its entire cost structure, which is the back office staff, the office staff, and it enables them to go from a fixed cost to a variable cost, and it radically reduces the cost as well.
I like the way you stated that, especially the fact that you're paying, and well, in some cases, right? However, that payment structure is literally you're using this per thought, right? I think that's an interesting way to think about this technology and number of the services out there providing, especially more on the generative AI side of things as well. I'd love if you could focus for us the AI in particular in regards to selling for the brokerage side of things. And do you think it's beneficial for brokers to consider their selling and their sales operations and how AI could fit into that model as well?
Yeah. It's arguably the most important aspect of a brokerage business is its ability to sell. It's usually what it's constrained by. So if you ask, like, how would you double the business? Typically you wouldn't say, well, the hardest part of doubling the business is going to be securing capacity, issuing invoices, adding a new office. It's going to be winning enough business, winning enough customers. And there's some real kind of key ratios here that have always existed about how much a book of business each headcount can produce and how long it'll take them to ramp to get to that level. And I think that those are really disrupted by the arrival of AI. AI can do things that look like assistants, so they can make an individual broker in a office more effective. So the ratios get distorted in that sense. But it can also just entirely supplant some of the growth and sales function whether that's canvassing and identifying targets, which shippers to contact, whether that's constructing effective outreach messaging and delivering that outreach messaging, or that's reacting to when you do make contacts. So coming up with an account plan and following through on that account plan, evaluating, kind of reading the room, evaluating whether there's real interest here or not. So the whole sales pipeline. And then, the actual mechanics of coming up with effective pricing and quoting and offers, and zeroing in on the business, detecting and zeroing in on the elements of the business where you're differentiated and you have a right to win and a right to earn above other brokerages. So in all of those aspects, these are all thinking work, and it's all things that are disrupted or through assistance or replaced by the arrival of generative AI.
It's interesting. I look back at my brokerage days and I wonder, like, how more effective would I have been as a sales rep with some of these tools in particular. And I can the first thing I think of, right, is not only what's good for the business, but even personally, what's
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
in my
yeah,
pockets, and being able to increase my take home, but almost even live like a maybe less stressful job, getting rid of that minutia that I think everyone teases about when we talk about how stressful this industry can be. But these, I think, is creating real solutions to help improve that. And there's a lot of brokerage leaders watching this too, and of course, for them, technology means a usual nice chunk of investment, right? And I'm interested from your perspective, especially in the work that you do as well. Could you elaborate on how AI can automate for you? You touched on better efficiency, but even more so reliability, and help reduce costs at the end of the day, not only just for the broker, but even for the shippers, because that margin is going to be a huge issue, right? I think in the upcoming years, I think you're going to see that beginning to shrink in the brokerage landscape. So how do we reduce costs so that we can still live in that environment and still hopefully bring better service and better pricing to shippers as well?
yeah. I think that the two things that happen with the cost structure of a brokerage is that first, much more of it swings to variable costs as opposed to fixed costs. Now, I know many people feel like, well, we already have pretty variable costs. Like in the downturn market, unfortunately, you would lay off some of your staff, but you can right size your cost structure much faster than somebody who owns a fleet, for example. Okay, but in reality, the flexibility there is still pretty low compared to what's coming out. So, I for example, if I look at how large brokerages would have automated quotation generation, so this is like customer asks, "Hey, can you cover X?" and you come up with a quote and you reply back. Then maybe you have a decent win rate, but it's still only going to be 10% to 20%, something like that on those kind of on the fly spot quotes. And same thing for RFQs, whatever. Those are both pretty fixed costs. Like you got to have a team who's ready to receive that request, and then they have to have a certain amount of expertise to turn it around and send it out. The more sophisticated brokerages would have invested in technology to improve their win rate, to improve the margin on what they win, and to be able to reply at greater volume. But those are all fixed costs. Like you had to have an IT team, you had to build that stuff up, you had to do training. I think about in a generative AI world, companies like Trimble, but I imagine others as well, offer pay when it works type models, because our underlying structure is variable. Our cost structure with generative AI is, if you have a day off like 4th of July, there's no cost on that day. And the next day when you have a spike in demand that people are trying to catch up because their factory was down and they're trying to do last minute shipping or whatever, then yeah, our cost structure went up, but it's essentially just pay when you actually win business. So I think the first thing to note is there's a better alignment between, almost like skin in the game, between the cost drivers and the revenue drivers. So it's much, much more aligned, really down to almost a load by load basis. Then the second thing is the cost of generative AI solutions is just much, much lower than sort of traditional software. Coding is hard. It's not natural to people, and software is demanding, and people are imperfect. So when they come together, you have to have a certain quality of staff who make software, and it takes them a certain amount of time. It's thoughtful work. But with generative AI, the drivers of that, like what it costs to make software, are just rapidly reducing. And so I think technology is going to be shifting more towards some other very complex things that you have in your life, but just don't cost enough that you care about them. Like think about trash collection, having safe drinking water in every building you walk into. Like, that's expensive stuff to have, but the cost is so low that you just don't think about it. You expect that there'll always be trash collection everywhere you go, and there'll always be water. And I think that's kind of where we're heading for as a technology providers into brokerages. It's heading into this very, very low cost, very effective, always available, reliable direction.
Yeah, I think that's positive signs for those in this industry who are interested in implementing in their own businesses. And looking in the future, what do you think AI is going to be pushing innovation wise, and what should brokers be looking forward to being able to do with this technology as this becomes even, I guess, more useful within the industry as a whole, but as technology becomes, I think, even more available.
Yeah. I think there's a couple trends to watch for, and this is maybe the things for the audience to keep in mind. So one is that the time duration that you leave to the AI to do its thing, right, is going to be expanding. So we already had this experience. If you worked with ChatGPT right when it came out, it's you ask a question, you get back an immediate answer. It's like chatting on WhatsApp or something with someone. Now, in the latest models, the sort of so-called reasoning models, you get answers that are going to take a minute or two to produce. So you can feel that the work that's being done is kind of enlarged quite a bit, and the user experience with that is that you don't just sit there and watch the screen waiting for 2 minutes. You go do something else. You switch and go multitask. Now, I would expect in 2025 that period that you leave the AI to do its work is going to be enlarging. And at some point you get to this sort of, you're talking about, what do I want the AI to do today, like a day period, the same way you would with a junior staff member, somebody who's been on the job for a couple years, and you give them the directives that isn't, hey, go open a new branch for me, right? That's pretty big scale. But it's more like, today I want you to get the following things done, and then we're going to check in on where you're at with that at the end of the day. That's kind of time horizons I think we'll see by the end of the year. The second thing to sort of focus on is the changing way in which we interact with our software, and also the way our shipper customers would expect to interact with software. So there's this rise of kind of no button, no screen type interfaces. They're basically voice, they're calls, more or less. And that's really fascinating as a alternative way to work. So it may be that instead of being in front of your computer, the computer lays things out in a certain flat space. You got to move a cursor, you sort of click into maybe a text box, you look down at your keyboard, you type in something, then you move your cursor again and click like go or submit or whatever. That whole thing, which is very unnatural, we have to be taught to do that. That's not how we're used to working with other people. That's going to be supplanted pretty rapidly with something that's more like this. It's a dialogue, right? And when you combine those two things together, it's just a ton of work that can be done in a very natural way with generative AI. The important thing to remember is, like, if you can just go back to this, if you can leave the AI alone for a day, it's not like it's just one worker. I mean, it could be 100, right? So the ability to sort of duplicate, parallelize this stuff is pretty massive. So I suspect what that leads to is just a really different relationship between us and our technology, rather than being tools that we have to kind of build and configure and train for our workers. Our workers have to really adapt to the tool, actually, that it's the reverse. And we end up with these very super powered individuals. The software is almost in some sense like a powerful autocomplete. Like it'll finish if you're describing what you want done for the day, it'll finish the day's work for you. But somebody's gotta have the initial thought, right? They gotta have the initial creative insight of what they want done for that day. And that's where I think the staffing side of the brokerage goes. So that's what I would expect.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting future, and I wanted to thank you for joining us in this wonderful chat today. I think our audience is going to, of course, learn something, but also just look at AI, I think, a little bit differently and how they're implementing it within their own tech stacks as well. And Trimble, I think, is one to definitely learn from in this area too. For our audience, make sure you go check out everything they're working on and enjoy the rest of the show today. And Jonah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us too.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.